did you start at Mahtomedi?
I started at Mahtomedi in 1951. I came in January of 51, and I started out as a basketball coach. I was a basketball coach until the spring of the year. The football coach resigned that year, and I asked the superintendent if I could take football, and he said, sure, go ahead. So from then on, I was a football coach.
Was there something that was attractive about the football team that you wanted to take over?
I always liked football, probably better than basketball and other sports. I liked all the sports, but football, to me, was a man's game, I guess is what you'd call it, and I enjoyed it.
Had they had any notoriety, or had they been a good program before you took it?
They had won one championship in 45 before I got there, and when I started, we had 19 kids out for football, and it was. I looked at it and thought, gosh, this is going to be a struggle. But as it went on, the kids kept coming out, and it developed into a fairly decent program.
You were talking about more and more kids beginning to come out. What kind of success did you have in those early years?
The first year I was there, I won, or we won, 3 ball games and tied one. The second year I was there, we lost all 8 games. And I had the alumni on my tail for quite a bit of the time because we were not doing what we should be doing. I went and bought a book of the split tee with Bud Wilkinson. He was a popular coach at that time. Went to see his clinic, and we decided we were going to go with one formation. That was a split tee. We had 4 plays we ran. We ran an option, we ran a counter, we ran a jump pass, and we ran a quarterback sneak. And that's all we ran for that whole year. We won a couple of games, and then the next year, in 1954, was our first undefeated team, running just basic 4 plays. And then from then on, the next year after that, a couple of the kids graduated, and it was 1957 before we won another championship. And then we won 2 championships in 1959. That was when we were in a Skyline, and Skyline was just forming, and Little Six had just ended, so we played in both of them that year. And then in 1960, 61, 62, we won championships. We had a pretty good run in there, but 22 straight games we won. Ended up 14 straight shutouts in a row with that group. And from then on, it was kind of pretty good football. I mean, the kids liked to win because they wanted to do what their brothers did, and I was fortunate.
Do you think that that has a lot to do with what makes Zephyr football special, is kids following their family and their older brothers?
Oh, I think very much so. The kids of Mahtomedi are unique in the fact that they want to be winners, and they work hard. I mean, they've always worked hard. I've always said that I probably had the best program as far as kids go because each one wanted to be a winner. They wanted to do what their older brothers did.
You parlay that into a bunch of championships in the early 60s.
We were fortunate. In my stretch of time there, we won 15 championships in the years we were there. And I've had a group of coaches. The ones that most dear to me were the guys that are there right now, Wally and Ken and Joe, the 3 of them that I had when I was with. They were easy to get along with, and I always said if you got good kids and good assistant coaches, you're going to win. And that's what we did.
Did you have kids on those legendary teams from the early 60s that were exceptionally big or exceptionally fast, or what made them so good?
I guess in the early 60s, the first, I hate to mention any names because there's so many good kids in there, but A couple of standouts. The first quarterback I had, Raul Dufresne, came down from Hugo. Hugo sent 20 kids down in the early 50s because they couldn't handle them in Forest Lake or wherever they were. So, and Raul Dufresne was a tough running kid, and he was a perfect quarterback for the split tee. He had the ability to pitch at a time when he needed it, and he could read the end and so forth. But he he wasn't much of a passer, but he was a great runner. He ran probably more touchdowns than any of our backs that particular 2 years he was with. And then another kid we had in the 60s, early 60s, Gene Rabo and Steve Ross, they both ran over 2,000 yards in their junior and senior year. So they were great kids. I mean, that's...
And I'd go back then for even the young men that you mentioned. What made them exceptional? Was it that they were particularly athletic, or was it that they were determined, or was it because they only had to know 4 plays?
That was part of it. We tried to keep it as simple as we could. We had the handle hung on us that we were a running team. We didn't throw the ball. But in the 60s, with the quarterback Flushin and Van Blerkum, we threw about a quarter of the time. And at that time, the kids called their own plays, which was, it was right out on the field. They'd come over and we'd tell them, we'll try to work this or that and so forth. But they called the play. And I think today, if you let some of these quarterbacks call their own plays, you'd probably win more ball games. And sometimes the coaches call for the sideline. Yeah.
Can you tell us about the team, and I don't know if this is an urban legend or not, but there was a team that wasn't scored on in the course of the regular season?
That was back in, let's see, it started in 59, and it ran through 61. We were 14 games in a row that we were not scored upon. They'd come run television. Dick Nesbitt was a great sports announcer at that time, and they'd come down, the scores would run down, and they'd come up to Mahtomedi and he'd stop, and they'd say, another 0. And I guess in those days, as a coach, I wasn't concerned whether we were going to lose, because I didn't think we were going to lose, but I was concerned that they were going to score on us, and that was made it fun.
And so as you transitioned from a offense with 4 basic set plays, and I'm sure variations off of those 4, and as the 1960s closed out and our culture changed a lot, what was that transition like for you and the Zephyr football program in the late 60s to the early 70s? Were there any special challenges with that?
More and more teams became more sophisticated with their passing and so forth, and you had defenses which were new to us. We also tried to incorporate more passing into our games and added off-tackle plays. We were noted for the off-tackle play. Eventually we got away from the split tee a little bit, and it was power football. But I go back and look at it, there's nothing new in football. It's somebody's used it someplace along the line, and it just kind of, if it fits your team, that's what you go with. And these kids at Mahtomedi are tough.
And that's interesting. I'll go back to a comment you made about there's nothing new in football. How would that apply to, you said these Mahtomedi kids are tough. From the 60s, the late 50s and 60s to the 70s, and perhaps coming forward, are the Mahtomedi kids still tough?
Yes. I go out there right now when I see the ball games, and it's a thrill to watch the kids, because I can look at one and say, boy, he was just like so-and-so when I had him, and this one over here is running this way, or this kid is catching a pass, or defense, and so forth. I guess I can associate some of the kids who I don't know with some of the players I had. And again, I say that's because Mahtomedi has some tough, good kids out there.
Do you ever have a theory or a thought or a philosophical philosophical notion of why Zephyr football is the way it is, why it's become the entity that it is compared to other schools' programs?
I've always said that there's one thing that hasn't changed in school: discipline and a football team. These football players are well disciplined in order to win. And that's one thing that has not changed. Your classrooms and everything else has changed over the years. But a winner has to be disciplined, and these kids are.
When a Zephyr football player steps foot on the varsity field for the first time, he's really stepping into a pretty storied and legendary program from Mahtomedi, irrespective of wins or losses. The field that they step onto now is pretty high-tech compared to the field that you first would have coached on. Where was that first field?
Oh, the first football field is where the community center is now. That used to be the high school and the middle school all in one. And it was right behind the building. There was a physical education field and the football field and so forth. There were no grass on it. I remember one of the games, one of the kids caught a pass, and he was running down the field, a little puff, 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 puff. The dust would come up behind his feet and so forth. And we laughed about that for years. And finally they got ambitious and decided they would fill in part of the pond out next to the building. And that became our football field. And when they filled it in, about 2 years after they filled it in, we were playing out there one day, and all of a sudden, a big hole opened in the middle of the field. Evidently, they dumped stumps and trees into it and so forth, and it hadn't settled right. And it almost lost a kid in the hole on the thing. And that was our football field for many years until we moved down to the new high school.
So in those early days, you guys had to build your own field to start out?
We had to build our own to start with.
And you pulled your DNR permits and all that.
Right.
In the move to the location of the new field, did you ever consider or feel that something was going to be lost in sort of the history of your team in changing fields?
Well, I don't think so necessarily, because we had moved from one Fayette field to another temporary type field, and then when we get the new field down there, it was kind of like in heaven because we had a lot of space and so forth. But I remember one of the first games we had down there was with Park Center, and Park Center was about 6 times our size. But they came out, we didn't have a scoreboard, but we took the basketball scoreboard out of the gym and hung it on the back of a truck. But to get the electricity to it, we had to run a line about a half a mile away to plug in someplace. And the clock ran so slow, it just was barely going over. I think it took about an hour and a half to play a 45-minute game or so. We ended up, they beat us 14-7. We were ahead of them to begin with, but we just ran out of gas at that length of time.
Could have had a longer extension cord and got a few more minutes.
Yeah, that would have been.
When you began the era, and for lack of a better term, but maybe the modern era started at the new high school and the new location, were there ever any instances where, at that point, it would have been close to 20 years from your first years, were there ever any instances where you had coached sons of the fathers you had coached in the earlier era?
Yes. I had a lot of boys that I had earlier coached, and one of the reasons why I finally decided to get out of coaching is when I had a grandson of one of the guys I coached come up, and that became
What is one or among some of your greatest joys or satisfactions from your run as Zephyr football coach? What's something that gives you probably the most satisfaction when you look back?
there's been so many things. I guess one of the things that I always felt real good about is when a kid would come back 20, 30 years later and walk out on the field and say, Mr. Smith, do you remember me? And of course, I'd look at him and he'd changed a bit. Then he'd tell me who he was, and he'd come up and say, because of you, I developed, and football, I developed a way of life in my business and whatever it happens to be, and I guess I owe it all to football. And I guess that was a thrill. Every now and then we get a chance to go to one of the reunions, meet some of the kids again that we've had over the years, and it's fun to see them, what they've done with their lives, and fun to see their kids and so forth. So it's been a great life.
What would be, is there anything over the years, is there anything, maybe it was a particular game or maybe a particular play that you wish you hadn't called? What would be the big regret from your 1,000 years in the program?
Oh, the one year that we were playing Totino Grace, and we played them to get into the, if we had won the game, we'd have ended up being in the state tournament, the state finals. And I guess it was a play down close to the goal line, and we decided to run an inside reverse. And one of our guards jumped offside, so the referee said at the point, well, anyhow, they took the ball, and they marched in 2 minutes down the field, 16 plays in a row, and won the game. Maybe if I hadn't called that play, we probably would have been a state champs that year.
Do you think Laura would have called that play?
I don't think so. She chewed me out afterward.
How exciting is it for you to watch the most current generation of Zephyrs, who would be the equivalent age of some of your younger grandchildren? How excited do you get watching them?
Oh, very excited. We enjoy it so much. And then the just to be up in the stands and watch them perform out there, we've enjoyed every minute of it, and we still feel part of it because all my coaches are together out there, and I enjoy each one of them. It's a pleasure to go out.
Do you ever think that in a certain game situation, do you ever think, I wish I could haul her down and tell her what to run?
You know, Bill, I made up my mind when I quit coaching that I was not going to sit in the stands and second guess. Because I know what it's like to be out there. If the play works, it's a great play. And if the play doesn't work, it's a terrible play. And you've always got the second downtown quarterbacks behind, jumping on when it's nice and getting off when it's bad. So I sit in the stands, and Laura talks a lot, but I sit there and keep her mouth shut.
And with respect to that, they've enjoyed a lot of success building further on the great foundation that you were part of. That must be something that you just take great joy in, watching this new generation of young guys take in Zephyr football. What does that make you feel like to see that? Oh,
I feel proud as punch when these guys win. Coming back home over here, it's a thrill when somebody knows or sees that I'm from Mahtomedi, and they say, hey, I see they're still winning out there. They've got a good tradition going. And since I left, Wally and the team and the coaches have had great success, much more than I did. I mean, their record is so much better than mine at that time for the amount of games they played and the losses they've had. They've just done a wonderful job, and it's fun to watch them.
It's because they added a few more plays.
Yeah, they had quite a few more plays. In fact, I'm not quite sure I'd be able to follow all those plays that they have out there.
You just used the word, and I think that's one of the things I was thinking about, you use the word tradition. Is there a single phrase or a single word or a single thought that you have, again, that distinguishes that tradition? Maybe it's their character or something. What is it in the tradition of Mahtomedi Zephyr football that sets them apart from a new expansion school in Maple Grove or something like that?
I think over the years, with the success that Mahtomedi has had in football, when a kid comes out for football out there, I think he feels he has something to live up to. And I think that's what really carries them on. They want to be a part of a great program, and Wally, Ken, and Joe have really developed a great program out there.
Oh, this will be a departure from some of what we've been talking about. And this might be more to some of the legends and myths. Did you ever break a chalkboard?
There's been a lot said about that. One time we were talking in the game at halftime, and I don't know, just to kind of spark the guys, they looked a little dead going out, and when we went out I said, let's go get them, and I hit the doggone chalkboard and it broke, and a piece of it went into my hand, and as I walked out, I could hear one of the kids say, he's bleeding. So I guess that's what made him hump that day. We ended up winning the game.
And did you ever put a pen through your hand?
Accidentally, one time.
Was that at a halftime speech?
It was at a halftime speech. I had the dumb thing in my hand, and I don't know why I had it in my hand, and I went bang on the board, and it went through this part of the finger. So, but they play that up an awful lot. I think if you tell a kid, particularly if he's had brothers or uncles or somebody out, you know, you had an uncle out there that comes up to the stands and watches you play, and they feel that you are an extension of them. They're all behind you and they want you to win. And I think sometimes maybe that might get to the kids.
Does any one hit in all the years of you coaching football, is there any one collision or hit that stands out that you still remember?
There's been so many of them. I guess probably Rabel was one of the toughest kids. I'll tell you another one. Okay, Terry Reisinger. Terry Reisinger was a tough running back for us. And he played defense, linebacker, and we were playing Brooklyn Center. He, all of a sudden, he come off the field and he says, Coach, something wrong with my nose. And the nose was way over on the side of his face and was bleeding like mad. It was bent way over on the side. I said, well, Terry, you can't go in there like that. And he says, heck, I can't. And his dad was behind him. And I said, I'm not going to let him go. He said, I'll fix that. And he took it and crunk, and punched it back, and it was straight again. I guess that was probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen. The kid went back in and played. I asked his dad. Now I said, if it was me, I wouldn't let him back in. The dad says, let him play if he wants to play. So Terry wanted to go, and I guess it wasn't life-threatening, so he went back in, and we won the game. It was kind of the thing that tipped the whole team off, where they got excited, everybody did. And it was a close game until that point, but we ended up beating them.
For all the, again, many critical games and critical seasons over the years, what was it like? I know prior to the new era and the new field, you played all your games in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. You didn't have a late field.
Didn't have a late.
What was it like when you finally got to play under the Friday night lights?
It was great. We had more people come out to see the games and so forth. And we didn't have to rush to get out of class. One of the things I hated the most was to ask all the teachers if the kids could get excused early so we could tape them and get them ready for the game and so forth. And I know it bothered a lot of the teachers in the classroom because it were taking them out of their studies and things to do this. But it was, it just felt great when we didn't have to go through that anymore. Plus, we got all the parents could come out and see the game.
And that kind of launched the new era that you handed off to the guys that are there now.
Yeah.
If you had anything to impart, this video will be for the young men who are on this year's team. If there's any bit of encouragement or wisdom you could impart to them as they come through the rite of passage that is Zephyr football, what would you tell those young men?
Football is a way of life. It teaches you discipline, it teaches you desire and drive and so forth. Things you learn on that football field is going to help you later on in life. I know a lot of people tell them that, but I seriously believe that. I go way back when I first started coaching, and I heard this phrase. General Douglas MacArthur told his troops, "Give me a man who has played 11-man football, and I'll make a soldier out of him." It was early in the, early 70s when the long hair became popular and so forth. I guess I was too rigid. I made everybody cut their hair. They had to cut it straight if they didn't. At the end of one season, one of the boys wrote me a letter, and it changed my whole thought. He said, "Coach," he says, "I respect you. I enjoyed playing for you, but I will never forgive you for having me cut my hair." And I got to thinking, why does a kid have to cut his hair? If he wants to wear his hair in a ponytail, if he wants to wear his hair around his eardrums, fine. If he played football, that's the most important thing. And I think, for me, that was one of the things that I told my wife many, many times, that I regretted that I was so rigid on some of those things.
There was a changing cultural deal then, too.
Yeah. And then, so many coaches did that, and then about 4 or 5 years later, I'd see these coaches with hair way down around their ears, and I'd say, boy, they're not practicing what they're preaching, and so forth. So I guess that was probably one of the things that I would regret the most.
You don't regret making us just all wear black shoes? None of us could wear white shoes?
That was a standard procedure. One thing I'd like to say, behind every successful coach is a great wife. My wife missed 2 games that I coached. One, her parents were in a serious accident. And one time, living here in Osseo, it snowed so bad I wouldn't let her come out to the game. And when I meet the guys over the years, they always talk about her turkey dinners. So I'm proud of her.
And I have one last question. Who do you think was the best free safety in the conference in 1975?
I'm looking right at him.